Good evening, everyone. I'm Ankit, and you're watching the StudyIQ IS English channel. Now, today is 3rd of April, and we are going to discuss important articles from the Indian Express newspaper. Now, these are the articles that we are going to cover. We'll start our today's discussion with this first article that highlights decline in bond yield. Now, students more often what they do is they mistake bond prices and bond yield. So, I'll try to cover in detail about how you calculate bond yield for any kind of macroeconomic move that happens in India or outside the country, right? Now, the subject of bond yield is something very important from exams point of view. As you can see, directly and indirectly questions have appeared on this topic, and also the news cycle is filled with events that leads to increase in government bond yields, both Indian government and be it foreign governments like US bond yields. So these articles, these are important from GS paper 3 perspective, that is Indian economy. Then in the second article, we'll be understanding about purchasing managers index. Now this is a kind of index much similar to industrial index for industrial production, but we'll understand in our today's discussion how is it different from other industry based indicators. Now the government or the agency which brings out this purchasing managers index, it has reported that India's purchasing managers index is on an 8-month high, and this highlights that the manufacturing activity is going quite strong. So we'll try to understand how this index can be interpreted, which body brings this index, and how it is different from IIP. Again, this becomes a part of economy, therefore relevant portion of the syllabus is GS paper 3. Then in the third article, we'll be discussing about India-Chile relations, because the President of Chile is on a state visit to India from April 1st to 5th, and will understand the significance of Chile, particularly for Indian point of view. Now, this kind of a relation, that is relations between India and another country, these are part of your IR syllabus, therefore the relevant paper is GS paper 2, that is the IR part. Then in the fourth article, we'll try to understand the Convention of Biological Weapons. Now this Biological Weapons Convention, it actually prohibited the use, testing and also transfer of such biological weapons which had a quite destructive potential. And also you can understand chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, all of these come under the category of weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. Now globally, there are various conventions that prohibit or limit the use of such kind of weapons. We'll understand how biological weapons have been outlawed, similar to the manner and also somewhat different to the manner of outlawing the chemical weapons. So this again is a part of GS paper 2 syllabus, that important agreements that have led to changes in international relation and also the global world order. Then in the fifth article, we'll be understanding about the newly discovered moon of the planet Saturn. Now in that regard, we'll understand how the moons were discovered. We'll also understand some of the important physiological and geographical features of the planet Saturn. In the end, we'll have a detailed discussion about the dual citizenship. Now, there are emerging demands from various sections of society, particularly influential people of Indian origin who live abroad, and they want Indian government to start granting dual citizenship. Now, according to Article 7 of the Indian Constitution, you have to understand that dual citizenship in particular is something that is not possible as per the current constitutional circumstances. And there are different type of categories of people in India. Some are citizens who have all the rights concerning like a normal citizen of a country, but Indian people living in other countries who are of Indian origin, they can be categorized into different categories like NRI, OCIs, etc. So we'll try to understand in detail how the citizenship is offered, how is it, or how are citizens having more rights than other people who might belong to India some way or the other, and also we'll understand the arguments in what ways we can extend dual citizenship and what are the challenges associated with it. Now this kind of a this kind of a topic that deals with a particular provision of constitution belongs to Indian polity, therefore the relevant portion of the syllabus is GS paper 2. I'm sorry. About Saturn, the relevant paper was GS paper 3 as it deals with matters related to science and technology, because in science and technology, you'll see the syllabus has the heading called as awareness related to space. So these are the articles that we are going to cover today. And as usual, the notes for this session will be available on my Telegram channel, ATS Live. You can go and search it on the top right hand corner of your mobile app by entering the words ATS Live. It will take you directly to my channel, and also you have an option to scan this QR code. Now, good evening, Baga, Shushmita, Mohit, Niranjan, Gibson, Kaizen, Achal, Yashi, Arya. Is Sarang there? I wonder is Sarang there or not. Now, this is the question that we'll take up today. I understand I am yet to evaluate the answers that were submitted yesterday. I've read them, but for some reason or the other, I was busy somewhere. So I was unable to tell you what is lacking and what are good aspects of those answers, right? Now, this is the question that we are going to evaluate. The Indian diaspora plays a significant role in the country's economic and diplomatic outreach. In this context, analyze whether granting dual citizenship can strengthen India's global engagement with balancing national interest. So in that regard, when the word analyze, you'll have to take a very balanced outlook of your answer. That is, your answer should contain both arguments in favor and arguments against what has been asked in the questions. So please make sure to remember that. Also, whenever you're starting your answer and concluding your answer, make sure to add very relevant and fact-based introduction and conclusion, because generalized introduction and conclusion anyone can write. So what makes your answer different? It is those facts that helps you grasp the attention of the paper evaluator and also tells or indirectly tells that person that you know this answer. So your first impression of the answer comes through introduction. So please make sure to land your introductions quite well. Okay. But before solving that question, we'll look into the relevant articles. But before that, let us deal with the other 5 articles that we are going to discuss today. Now, these are the articles that we are going to start up with. This appeared in the business or the economy page of the Indian Express, which today is on page 13. And it states that the 10-year bond yield, that are benchmark 10-year bonds of Indian government, they are seeing a sharp decline in their yields ahead of RBI's policy review. So how does any macroeconomic decision by Indian government, by Indian central bank, or for that matter central bank of any country like US Federal Reserve for that matter, how it can impact bond yield? So we'll try to understand first of all how to calculate bond yield, because students, what they do, what they wrongly do in the exams, that they understand or calculate bond yields directly. But I'll tell you a easier and a nicer way to get the bond yields right. Okay, so that is the purpose of our today's discussion. Now, the context of this article states that ahead of the RBI's monetary policy review, RBI undertakes the review of its monetary policy bi-monthly by convention. That is the Monetary Policy Committee. It assesses the macroeconomic climate of the India, particularly the levels of inflation that are prevailing in the economy, and accordingly increases, reduces, or keeps the repo rate as same. So this is how RBI takes monetary policy review. So you can understand, whenever RBI reduces the repo rate, it increases the money supply, and increase of money supply has implications on bond yield. So we'll try to understand how such macroeconomic factors can alter bond yield. Now, there are many important developments that are happening, not just in India, but across the globe. US President Donald Trump has imposed his new tariff policy, and therefore, because of these two ongoing events, India's government's bond yield, or the benchmark 10-year bonds, the yields of these bonds have reduced. Now, these have reduced sharply by 9 basis points. How much it has reduced, not immaterial for our exam. Now, other forms of changes in Indian economy is that the central bank announced that it will buy 80,000 crore worths of bond in April. So you can understand the demand for bond in these cases will increase, because government or the RBI is trying to buy these kind of bonds. So how increase in demand for bond, how it affects the bond yields, we'll try to understand. Now, very simply, let me tell you what is bond yield. Suppose you are going to buy this particular piece of bond that has a face value of rupees 100, and this bond says that after 1 year, the holder of this bond is eligible to get how much? Rupees 105 back. So this is 1 year of holding period that the bond says. So what is the bond yield for this particular bond? The bond yield becomes 5%. Understand? So what is bond yield? It is actually the return that any investor gets after they invest in a particular financial instrument. So that return is what is called as yield. So in that case, once you are buying a bond for rupees 100 and after a year you are getting rupees 105, so that means the bond yield for this particular bond becomes 100 rupees. Now, the maturity period of this bond was 1 year. But what if you need this money back in, say, 3 months? So you might not get this money back because the maturity period of this bond is 1 year. So instead you sell this bond to another person. What is happening today? At a discounted rate of rupees 95. So this is the discounted rate on which you have sold your bond. Now, the bond price for this person becomes 95. Okay, but after 1 year, when this person is going to return the bond to the bond issuer, that bond will again get him rupees 105. Because irrespective of what he was selling, the ultimate end of the bond is they will be paid 105 rupees. So in that case, return for this investor who had bought this bond for rupees 95, this bond yield becomes 10.58%. So as you can see, as the bond price, it reduced from 100 to 95, bond yield, it increased from 5 to 10.58%. Understood? So what is the relation between bond price and bond yield? See, with increase in bond price, you understand there is a reduction in bond yield. Similarly, with reduction in bond yield, there is an increase in bond yields. So this highlights that bond prices and bond yields, they have a inverse relation. Now give me a second. Yes. So as you can understand, as bond prices were reducing, bond yield increased. So this highlights that there is an inverse relation between bond prices and bond yield. So whenever any macroeconomic activity happens, what you have to remember is that you have to first calculate how it affects the bond prices. Then automatically you can arrive at the bond yield. So if demand for bond increases in any circumstances, what will happen? The bond prices will increase. Similarly, if demand for bond reduces, what happens? That bond prices reduce. So any change in monetary policy or in any change in fiscal policy, any change in stock markets, you have to calculate how the demand of bond will be affected. So suppose if the interest rates of the economy is reducing, suppose if the RBI is in process to reduce the money supply or to reduce the repo rate. So in that case, investors wouldn't want to invest in bank accounts. They wouldn't want to invest in fixed deposits. So their natural alternative for investment becomes bond. So in that case, the demand for bonds increases. And when demand for bonds increases, you understand bond prices will increase and this will reduce the bond yield. Understand? Similarly, if US increases or US Federal Reserve increases the market interest rate. So what will happen? The investors in India will sell off their investment and go to US. So in that case, the demand for bonds in India will reduce and this will reduce the bond price, pushing up the bond yield. Understand? So this is how you calculate bond yield in any circumstances. Okay. Now, so what are bonds and bond yields? Bonds are a financial instrument or they are a measure to raise capital and they can be issued either by a corporation or government entity. And now investors, they can acquire bonds at a value which is greater than nominal amount, known as a premium, or below it, which is referred to as discount. So suppose you are holding a bond of rupees 100 and the maturity period of that bond is 1 year, but for some reason you have to sell that bond in order to get some money. So you might sell it at a discount as the investor has sold a 100 rupee bond for 95. So in that case, the person holding a 100 rupee bond, he will get eventually 105. What the price he paid for it was 95. So in that case, bond yield becomes 10.58%. So this is how bond yields are affected in the economy. So the relation between bond prices and bond yield is what? It is an indirect relation, that whenever bond prices increase, bond yield reduces and vice versa. So there is an inverse connection between bond values and their yield, and since bonds typically pay a fixed interest rate, so investors, whenever they have a better opportunity to invest their money somewhere, they will obviously sell their bonds at a discount and hence it will reduce the demand for bond and eventually push down the prices. And whenever there is an increased market volatility, investors will try to fix their returns and they'll start investing in the bond, pushing up their demand and pushing up their prices. So this is how bond yields are affected in the economy. Now that you have understood it, let us try to solve this practice question and let's see whether you are able to solve it. No problem, Baga. So everyone, please. Now this is the term softening. What is softening? Is reduction. And what is hardening? Hardening means increase. Okay, so these kind of words can be used alternatively. If you find that in the exam, do not get worried. Softening means reduction, hardening means increase. So which of the following will lead to reduction in bond yield? Please let me know. Yes, Amar, if it is a cakewalk, why don't you solve this question? Mohit says option A. Now let us understand. Now whenever there is a rise in demand for bond, whenever there is a rise in demand for bonds, what will happen? It will increase bond prices, and when bond prices increase, we understand the relation with bond yield is inverse, so bond yield will reduce. Similarly, sale of government securities by the central bank under open market operation. So whenever RBI or any central bank sales or sells the government securities, this increases the supply of government securities in the market. So whenever there is an increase in supply, the demand automatically reduces, and with reduction in demand, we can understand bond prices will reduce, and this will push up the bond yields. So this is incorrect. First one was right because it led to reduction in bond yield. Second one leads to increase in bond yield. Now, increased borrowing by the government. When government increases the borrowing, they increase the borrowing by supplying what? By issuing government securities in the market. So, supply of government securities in case of government borrowing increases, and this reduces the demand of government securities in the market, therefore reduction in bond prices and increase in bond yield. Understand? So third one is also incorrect. Only one will result into softening of bond yield, that is reduction in bond yield, and therefore option A is the right answer. Yes, Amar, Bhanu, Yashi, yes, Niranjan, 2 and 3 are incorrect. If you are highlighting that, then in case it is right. Okay, so this is how. Do not worry if question asks you about bond yield. Always make sure to first calculate changes in bond prices, and automatically you will understand that the bond prices and bond yield, they have inverse relation. Understand? That is how you approach any kind of a bond yield question in the exam. Now, second article, also on the same page of the Indian Express newspaper, on the top left hand corner of the newspaper today, in page 13, it highlights that the manufacturing sector growth hits 8-month high as per the Purchasing Managers Index. So, manufacturing activity, which is measured by seasonally adjusted Purchasing Managers Index, it has climbed to an 8-month high of 58.1 in March 2025, according to a statement given by S&P Global. So, you can understand S&P Global is the publisher of this Purchasing Managers Index, but this article, if you'll see, it says that HSBC India Manufacturing Purchases Index. Do not worry if the organization name is given here, HSBC India Purchasing Managers Index, but do not worry, in some cases many banks, many financial institutions sponsor these kind of institution, but that does not make it the publisher of the index. Who publishes this index? Please remember, it is the institution known as S&P Global. S&P stands for Standard and Poor. Now this Purchasing Managers Index last month in February was 56.3. Now it has increased to what? 58.1. Now any PMI, if it is above value of 50, then it is considered as an expansion in the economy. Similarly, if it is less than 50, this means the economy or that particular activity for which the PMI is being published, that activity is contracting. Now this PMI value has stayed above 50 for last 45 months straight. Therefore, this is a quite significant event, and as it has reached to an 8-month high, so the probability of such questions appearing in the exam also becomes quite high. Now in this regard, let us understand what is Purchasing Managers Index. Now it is an indicator of business activity. Both it indicates manufacturing activities and service activities. Now this PMI is calculated separately for manufacturing and services for all economies, and then a composite index is constructed, which is made by a weighted average of both these sectors. So equal average is not provided, rather weighted average is provided. So what you have to understand, if the service sector is more prevalent in some kind of economy like in India, you'll understand the weightage of PMI service would be more in the composite index. Similarly, if our economy is manufacturing oriented like China, their PMI will be having much more weightage given to the PMI manufacturing index. So this is calculated as per the weighted average, and HSBC India Manufacturing Purchasers Index irrespective of the name, is compiled by the organization S&P Global. Now, any figure above 50 denotes expansion in business activity, and similarly, if it is below 50, it highlights contraction in business activity. Right? Now, how this index is calculated? It is a survey based measure that asks the respondents about changes in their perception in some key business variable as compared to month before. Now, this is derived from a series of both quantitative and qualitative questions that are put in front of the respondents. They are asked about what is their factory's output, whether or not they are getting new orders, what is their employment, whether it has increased or reduced in the past 1 month, and also what will be their business expectation in the next month. So this is a qualitative variable and these are quantitative variable. So both of these quantitative and qualitative variables are asked. They have a separate formula to calculate it, not important from our exam, and then a index for both manufacturing and services is derived, and then we also arrive at a composite index which creates or which has a weighted average of both these two sectors. Understand? So weighted average does not mean equal average. It means preference to certain kind of an activity can be given based on their respective share in the economy. Now, why is PMI so important? Why do newspapers cover PMI every month? Now, I have to understand PMI is usually released at the start of this month or start of any month, much before the official data on industrial output, manufacturing and GDP becomes available. Now, data on industrial output in India is given by IIP. It is published nearby mid of every month. The data related to GDP is published once every quarter. So, therefore, you have to wait for some time in order to get official data. Until then, you have official data, you rely on others data like PMI. So that is why PMI becomes very important. Also, central banks of many countries, including RBI, including Federal Reserve, they rely on such index to help them make decisions on whether to increase or decrease the interest rates, because you understand the RBI Monetary Policy Committee, it meets every 2 months. So every time it is meeting, it won't have the latest GDP figures, right? So therefore, they rely on such kind of an index. Also, this index gives an indication of corporate earnings, and you understand corporate earnings play a very important role in stock markets. Companies having better earnings will perform better in the stock market. Similarly, if a corporate earning of a company is not healthy, investors will be wary to invest in the bonds of those companies, right? So how do we get how the companies is performing? By understanding the PMI. So for example, if any country's manufacturing PMI is on contraction, so you can safely say that the manufacturing companies of that country might be struggling. So this is how you understand the corporate earnings, right? So this is the significance of the PMI data. Now also, as I told you, industrial activity in India officially is denoted by the index of industrial production. So what is the difference between these two? Let us understand this quickly also. Now, as you can see, instead of it is published by a company called S&P Global, whereas IIP is published by the National Statistical Office under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Now, PMI, it does not track actual production, rather it asks respondents what their outlook of the production is, whereas IIP, it tracks actual production, whereas PMI, it covers only private sector and only 500 big companies of the private sector, whereas IIP, it covers both private sector as well as public sector. Now, PMI covers both manufacturing and services, whereas IIP covers only the manufacturing sector. So you can say out of all these considerations, you can say PMI is less comprehensive since it covers only private sector, whereas IIP is comparatively more progressive and more comprehensive. Now also, PMIs can't be used for GDP calculation, whereas IIP is used for GDP calculation specifically to account for the unorganized sector, because IIP is also calculating the industrial activity that happens in countries' unorganized sector. Understand? So this is the difference between these two kind of index. Now let's see if you are able to solve this question. Quickly, please respond whether this question is correct or not. Amar, Bhanu, Mohit, Niranjan, Yashi, Arya, Aanchal, Kaizen. Shweta says option A. Well, let's see. First, it is a survey-based indicator of business conditions consisting both objective and subjective question. Now, what are objective questions? These are quantitative questions and subjective questions are qualitative questions. So both these parameters are used and first is correct. The composite PMI is an equal average of manufacturing and service sector PMI. It is incorrect. It is what? A weighted average. So for example, India is a service based economy, so the weight of service PMI in composite PMI would be more as compared to other countries, right? So second is incorrect. First one is right. Therefore option A is the correct answer because we have to identify correct statements. Now moving to the next article. This article is actually about the Chile president who is on a state visit to India. Now before Chile president arrived, most of Indians only had one idea about Chile, is that Lay's का एक flavor आता है. So in this regard, let us try to understand where Chile is located and what is the significance of Chile with respect to India. Now the context of this article is that Chilean president is on official visit to India. Now in terms of map, you can understand, if you don't know it already, I understand you are a UPSC aspirant, so your knowledge about geography is relatively much better than average Indians. So you can see Chile is located on the western part of the South American continent. It shares its border with three countries, Peru, Bolivia as well as Argentina. Longest border is Argentina. Now most of the Chile has a very cold climate because there is a cold current known as Humboldt current which flows through this area, right? Now because of this cold current, this creates a desiccating effect. This desiccating effects lead to emergence of cold deserts in these regions. The most prominent of the cold deserts in Chile is known as Atacama Desert. Now in this regard, let us quickly understand some of the geographical features of Chile. The capital city is Santiago. The bordering countries of Chile is Peru to the north, Bolivia to the northeast, as well as Argentina to the east, and it extends even to the southernmost part of the South American continent that has Drake Passage. Now this is the area known as Drake Passage, which is a very turbulent water between South America and Antarctica continent, right? So this is the Drake Passage, which has turbulent waterway connecting South America and Antarctica in the south. So these are the bordering countries. So three countries are bordering to Chile: Peru, Bolivia as well as Argentina. So BAP is how you will remember it. Now key places that are there in Chile. I told you Atacama Desert, which is one of the driest place on earth due to a very cold current known as Humboldt Ocean current, and this becomes a key source for also sodium nitrate fertilizer. Now Chiquicamta is the largest copper mining town in Chile. So also Chile is very abundant in important metals and rare earth elements. So that is why world over the interest for Chile has increased, and also the interest of India with respect to Chile has increased. So in that regard, let us try to understand what is the significance of countries like Chile for India. First is the significance related to trade and economic sector. Now in terms of trading partner, the country Chile is the fifth largest trading partner in South America. As bilateral trade has increased manifold, it has more than doubled from $1.5 billion in 2020. Now it stands very close to $4 billion. Similarly, both of these countries have a preferential trade agreement which allows both of these countries to have a tariff line or a discounted tariff line for almost 2,829 products at a discounted tariff rate. Also, this country has signed a double taxation avoidance agreement between India, which was signed back in 2020. So this is the important significance relating to trade and economic sector. Now let's talk about the most talked about point, that is the resource abundance in the country of Chile. Now Chile has abundant of resources, be it lithium, be it copper. It has plenty of these reserves. Chile is the world's largest producer of copper and one of the top three producers of lithium, which are both critical for India's electronic sector, India's burgeoning EV market, and also for generation of renewable energy. So that is why Indian companies, particularly Khanij Bidesh India Limited, known as Kabil, it is trying to rent some mines in Chile so as it can mine those metals from Chile and send them back to India. Also, Chile provides India with a potential collaboration in the sector of mining, as India's mining delegations have explored investment opportunities. Chile government is represented by Kabul. Similarly, private sector has also expressed interest, particularly in the extraction of metals like copper and lithium. Further, India and Chile have a very good relations as far as the demands and supply of renewable energy and climate concerns is concerned. Common interest in green energy, both of these countries have. India and Chile, they share strong commitments to climate action, especially in solar and wind energy. And Chile has also signed as a member to the International Solar Alliance, which is heralded by India as well as France, right? So, Chile is also now a member of International Solar Alliance. Further, in the manufacturing of green hydrogen, which India wants to increase, and also for clean energy cooperation, Chile is the global leader in the green manufacturing, an area where India is also trying to expand. And as you can see, even private sector companies like RIL, like Adani Enterprises, all of them have expressed interest that going forward, their major source of energy would come from green hydrogen, right? Also, would you have to understand that in terms of cultural aspects and traditional aspects also, India and Chile, they share a very strong bond. Chile for India serves as a gateway or as an entry point to the continent of Latin America. It provides India with access to Latin American markets and serve as a bridge for economic expansion in the region. Now, South America is a continent which is very far from India. So, diplomatically, it is perceived that those lands like South America, which is very far from India, also India has a very less economic entanglement with these regions, and India wants to change this because as a market, Latin America in general has a huge population and naturally it serves as a very big market for Indian companies. So if Indian companies were to expand abroad, Latin America is one of the key emerging markets. So in this regard, India wants to increase its interaction with all Latin American countries. Similarly, diplomatically and strategically, Chile is quite significant. Support for India at the Union. Chile has consistently supported that India's bid for permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, and in terms of global governance and multilateral forum, both countries, they frequently collaborate on the floors of United Nations, World Trade Organization and during the negotiations for climate change. Now, the last but not the least is the cultural and people to people ties. Now, you understand, if governments of those two countries are close, your ties will only go up till a certain extent, but it won't extend until people to people and cultural ties don't deepen. So in that regard, growing popularity of Indian culture serves as a base with which India's relation with Chile will be improved, right? So yoga, Ayurveda, Indian spiritual movements have a strong following in Chile. You can understand a country so far from India, and Indians who are present everywhere, Indian diaspora who are present in Chile, they are about 4,000 in number, and mainly they belong to Sindhi community, and they play a key role in establishing and furthering the business and trade between these two countries. Understand? So these are important points that you have to remember as far as significance of Chile with respect to India is concerned. Good evening, Rishabh. On time as usual. Now, this is a practice question that belongs to a very similar question which appeared in 2023 on Ukraine. So, you can understand countries which are in news, they become important even from mapping point of view. So, I've curated a similar question on countries that share a land border with Chile, right? So, Mohit, Shweta says option C, Yashi says option D. Now, I told you countries that share border with Chile can be abbreviated as BAP, Bolivia, Argentina as well as Peru. So, Bolivia, Peru, Argentina is correct, Paraguay is not. 1, 2, 4 is the correct answer. So, option C is the right answer. Okay. Now, like I told you, in IR, we just don't deal with Chile, but we deal with all countries. Similarly, in economy, we just don't deal with the problems of bond yields, but we go in detail about the aspects of financial market. I told you the difference. What is bond? It is a financial instrument that helps companies and governments to get loans from the market. Similarly, there are other financial instruments like equity, like shares, like mutual funds. So all of these are covered in great detail in the economy classes. Now, classes for economy and other important subjects, these are offered in the P2I batches or also known as foundation batches. Now, right now, the admissions have started for the batch which began on 2nd of April. You can still take admissions on these batch. How to take admissions, at what rate you have to take admissions, and what kind of a course you have to opt. This is the table which will help you to understand. Now, my recommendation to you will be to opt the best option, that is the diamond option, as it provides you with selection box, as it provides you with reward. In case if you clear prelims, you will be given full refund of your course money. In case you top the monthly tests in our StudyIQ, you will be provided a financial reward of 11,000 rupees. Similarly, you will be given option to have a one-to-one chat with the teachers also, that is Margdarshan, and also if you perform well in prelims as well as mains test series, you will be brought to Delhi. Your every expense, be it fooding, be it lodging, be it study related expenses, will be borne by StudyIQ, and you will be brought to Delhi and you will be taught in a particular way so that it will help you clear both prelims and mains examination. That is a residential program. Similarly, interview guidance program is also available in the diamond courses. How to take admissions for this? Let me tell you that. Now go to our website. You need to create an account first, simply by logging in with your mobile number. Click on Explore Courses. As soon as you click on Explore Courses, there's a tile above which says which kind of a language you need to opt. Suppose if you want to opt for English language, as I understand, some of you who are watching this, Hindi is not your mother tongue. So in that case, please opt for UPSC IS English. Click on this first tile which says April evening English batch. The prices for this batch is ongoing right now. It will increase after 7th of April. So please make sure to get your admissions before 7th of April. Right now, this course is available at 43,749 rupees. But using the code which is flashing on the bottom half of your screen, you can get even more discounts to the amount. And let me tell you how. Click on Buy Now. Then you have an option to add promo code here. This says enter coupon code. Click on this, add or write ATS live, which is the code, my code, that will help you get maximum discount. Click on apply here. As soon as you click on apply, you can see by using the code ATS live, your discount is added, that is of 7,500 rupees. Now the diamond course, which was available at 43,749, now is available at 34,999. Similarly, platinum is available at 27,999, gold at 17,999. So that is how you get maximum discounts. Maximum discount is available on diamond course for 8,500, and you will get this only after applying the code ATS live. Understand? So this is how you get the best courses available and at the best rate that is possible. Now moving to another article, I saw this statement somewhere by the US Foreign Ministry or the US Department of State. It states that it is going to commemorate the 50th anniversary for a biological weapons convention. Now whenever there is a landmark anniversary for any kind of an agreement that has been signed, automatically that becomes important from prelims examination. So I borrowed this screenshot from internet, so please pardon me, I've gone beyond Indian Express. My intention is only to give you a complete coverage of current affairs. Now, 26th March of 2025, that was last week, it marks 50th anniversary of the entry into force of Biological Weapons Convention. So, let us understand what this Biological Weapons Convention is and why was it so significant. Now, Biological Weapons Convention is the world's first multilateral disarmament treaty that has banned an entire class of weapons of mass destruction. Now, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, these are called as weapons of mass destruction, and biological weapons were prohibited by this particular treaty known as Biological Weapons Convention, which came into force on March 26th, 1975. So, therefore, you can say 50 years have passed since then. Now, biological weapons are a category of weapons that uses disease-causing organisms or toxic like bacteria, viruses, fungi, and these are intentionally used to harm or kill humans, animals, plants for military or terrorism purposes. Now, overall, the use of such biological weapons is banned not just for armies of the countries but also for terrorist organizations. Now, this treaty aims to ensure that the biological sciences and biotechnology, they are only used for peaceful purposes, for health related purposes, and they are not used for destructive purposes for harming and killing people and other living beings. So that is why BWC becomes so important. Now, what this treaty does is that it prohibits development of biological weapons, production of biological weapons, acquisition of biological weapons, transferring it to another organization, be it another state, be it a non-state actor, stockpiling and use of such weapons, and also toxic weapons. So, it prohibits each and everything that is related to the biological weapons. Now, this convention was negotiated by the Conference of Committee on Disarmament, which happened in Geneva, Switzerland, And now the members of this biological weapons conventions, they include 188 countries, including India, but some other countries, they are not members of BWC. These include Chad, Djibouti, Eritrea, as well as Israel. So 3 non-significant African countries and 1 very significant player in the Middle East, they have not signed biological weapons convention. But there are certain challenges that is faced by the BWC. First is there is no option to verify whether the states have actually stopped developing, transferring or holding the biological weapons. Unlike the Chemical Weapon Convention, which has Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons as a lead organization which verifies that other countries are actually following the treaty. Similarly, International Atomic Energy Authority, IAEA, it monitors whether the countries who are using nuclear fuel for power related purposes, they are diverting those nuclear fuel to make nuclear bombs. So similarly, there is no similar verification mechanism that is present currently to ascertain whether countries are following the provisions of the Biological Weapons Convention. So unlike other disarmament treaties like Chemical Weapons Convention, BWC has no formal inspection system. Also, in recent times, we have seen that there are emerging biological threats. What is the most emerging biological threat that we have seen in the recent times? That is how a zoonotic virus, it trickled down to human beings and caused havoc in form of COVID-19 pandemic. So what if someone uses a similar kind of virus and makes a biological weapon out of it? You can understand the destruction would be so severe and so painful. So advances in synthetic biology, genetic engineering and biotechnology have created new risks, and also interaction or increased interaction between humans and animals have created a potential that diseases, viruses, bacteria which are zoonotic in origin might trickle down also to human beings. Okay, so these are the problems. Now in UPSC 2016 prelims examination, there was a question relating to Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. So I've changed that particular question. I've curated that one to suit our today's discussion on Biological Weapons Convention. So let's see if you are able to tell me the right answer or not. Bhanu, Yashi, Amar, Shweta, Mohit, Rishav, Shushmita. What is the right answer? Shweta says option C, Bhanu option C. Others who are present and not replying: Achal, Kaizen, Gibson, Niranjan. Well, it is the first multilateral disarmament treaty that completely bans an entire category of WMD. This is right. It is a formal it has a formal verification and inspection mechanism to ensure compliance. Incorrect, I told you. CWC does, BWC does not. The convention aims to ensure that biological sciences and biological technology are used only for peaceful purposes. Correct. Second one is incorrect. First one is right. We have to identify correct statement. So option C again is the right answer. Yes, all of you are right. Niranjan, Amar, Yashi, Mohit, Shushmita, Bhanu, Shweta, Yashi. Yes, all of you are right. Now moving to this next article. This article actually appeared in yesterday's newspaper, but yesterday's newspaper almost had 8 to 9 important articles. So I had to be very specific in choosing just 6 of them because I have to complete this session in 1 day, or sorry, in 1 hour. So I've borrowed this article from yesterday's newspaper. This appeared in the explain section, which yesterday was on page 14, and it states all about the Saturn's 128 newly discovered moons. How much moons does the Earth has? It has only one, that is always called as moon, because you need not give another name to it, right? So recently astronomers, they have discovered 128 new moons orbiting Saturn, bringing the total count of moon of Saturn to 274. So Saturn के पास कितने हैं? 274. Earth के पास कितने हैं? Just one, named as moon, right? So sorry, I find this very funny. Now let us understand few of the details about Saturn. Saturn is the 6th planet from the sun. So if you count Mercury, Venus, Earth, the Saturn comes at 6th. Now it is also the 2nd largest planet in our solar system after Jupiter. This planet is made up of gas, primarily of hydrogen and helium. Now, in terms of density, this is the least dense planet in our solar system. Now, this has highest number of moons in our solar system, totaling at 274 right now. One of the moon of Saturn known as Titan. It is the second largest of the all moons in our solar system, second only to the Ganymede moon of Jupiter. Now Saturn's rapid rotation gives it an oblate shape. What is the shape of Earth? You might have studied in your geography. If you know anything, please let me know in the comments. What is the shape of Earth? Is it oblate? Is it circular? Is it spherical? What is it? Well, Earth's shape is called as geoid. So, similarly, Saturn's shape is called as oblate. It is flattened at the poles and it bulges at the equator, and this happens because of its rapid rotation across the moon. Now, I've attached an infographic here. It has all the important facts relating to Saturn, that is how much is the average temperature of the surface in Saturn. Similarly, it has more than 270 moons, that is 274 to be precise. It is made up of gases. 94% gases are hydrogen, 6% are helium. Now, it has a ring which you might know already. 1 year of Saturn in comparison to Earth is 29 years. Similarly, 1 day on Saturn amounts to 10 hours, 42 days. So, these are the important facts that are relating to Saturn. Now, quickly, let us move to our last article of the day. This article appeared also in the yesterday's newspaper in the op-ed section, and the writer of this article has actually demanded for offering dual citizenship to people belonging to India, right? Currently, as we understand, as per Article 9 of the Constitution, there is no provision to offer dual citizenship in India, because this article says anyone voluntarily acquiring citizenship of any other country automatically means that they will lose out on their Indian citizenship. Similarly, there have been demands that Indian diaspora is so much across the world. It has been said in the article that people of Indian origin, they amount to about 3.5 crore out of 30 crore overall people who are living outside the country. So 3.5 crore people of Indian origin, they are living outside India. Similarly, Indians in general, they send annually about $130 billion in remittances, which is the highest amount of remittances that is received by any country on earth. So this is the potential of Indian diaspora. Similarly, in American companies like Google, Microsoft, Adobe, all of these companies are headed by people belonging to Indian origin. So you can highlight Indian diaspora is not just huge in number, but also they are quite significant when it comes to their socioeconomic status in their resident countries. So that is why such articles have appeared in these fewer days in the newspaper, demanding that government now starts extending the dual citizenship, that once you are an Indian citizen, you can simultaneously also be a citizen of another country. For example, Christopher Nolan, who is a great Hollywood director, he's a dual citizen of both US and UK. So similarly, why can't just India also extend dual citizenship to its citizens? Now you have to understand different types of Indians. First is known as an Indian citizen, who has full political and civil rights as is promised in the Indian Constitution, which includes that Indian citizen is eligible to vote in an election, they can hold public office, and also they have an enormous amount of property rights, that they can even acquire agricultural property that is not available to foreign citizens. Similarly, there are processes how you can acquire Indian citizenship even if you are not by birth an Indian citizen, and this is as per the provisions of Citizenship Act of 1995, right? Similarly, Indian people who are present in another country, they have gone there for temporary basis. These are called as NRI or non-resident Indians. Now, Indian citizens who are resident in foreign countries for education, employment or other purposes, these are categorized as NRIs. Technically, they hold Indian passport, but they do not have as much right as a citizen of India living in India has. For example, if you are living even temporarily abroad, you lose out on your voting rights. So, similarly, they have higher amount of rights, but in terms of or in comparison to these citizens of India who are living in India, they don't have equal amount of rights. Now also foreigners, they can be categorized into two categories. First is a foreigner who is not a citizen of India and not of Indian origin, and these people, they require visas to stay in India, and the terms of visa which are issued to them, they are issued under Foreigners Act of 1946. But what about Indian origin people who are citizens of another country. Now for that, Indian government has brought out a scheme known as overseas citizens of India. Irrespective of the word citizen included in this, these people do not have citizenship right. But these people have higher socio-economic rights as compared to foreigners who do not even belong to Indian origin, right? For example, a people having the OCI status or this card, they have certain preferences over the foreigners. For example, they get certain benefits like visa-free travel in India, have certain property rights that except agricultural land, they can buy other kind of properties in India, but they can't vote, hold public office, or even get certain kind of government jobs like IAS, IPS, IFS, etc. Right? So they have more rights as compared to other foreigners, but in terms of citizens and OCI, naturally citizens have more social and political rights. Understand this different categories of people. Yes, Shrishmita, Yashi, Bhanu, all of you three are right. Earth's shape is geoid. Now in this regard, let us try to understand why Indian government should start offering dual citizenship. First reason is to strengthen the ties between India and Indian diaspora. Now you understand, whenever India was dealing with different governments, specifically US, Indian diaspora played a very huge role in tilting the favors of US government in favor of India. For example, Indian diaspora and the powerful people living in US who had Indian origin, they lobbied in favor of India that US should sign a nuclear agreement with India, and that is how influential people who belong to India, who are attached to India, they play a very important role. So dual citizenship could deepen such emotional and cultural ties that not just with their own belief, they will also have a legal status of belonging to India. So this will increase their sense of belongingness with Indian civilization, with Indian country, and with Indian culture. Also, these people significantly contribute to the economy of the resident country and also to India. So for example, they play a key, or they can play a larger role when it comes to investing their investments in India, bringing foreign technology which they have helped develop in their resident countries to India, and also help businesses of India collaborate with the foreign companies. So this is how it will also be beneficial to Indian economy. Now in terms of global mobility and flexibility, many Indian people who have studied and lived in India up till a certain age, they have moved to foreign locations for better opportunity, but they start demanding the citizenship of another country. Case in point is the CEO of an AI company known as Perplexity, Arvind Srinivas. Now he demanded that he is currently living in US on H1B visa, but he is demanding for American citizenship because it is difficult for him to navigate in different countries with a Indian passport. And similarly, if he will be provided an American green card or American citizenship, it would be easier for him to travel and move across the entire globe. So it will help Indian origin individuals living abroad retain stronger links with their heritage without giving up the opportunities of their adopted country. So many people, even they have attachment with India, they still are willing to give up their Indian citizenship in favor of another country's citizenship. So in that case, people will have an option to retain their Indian citizenship when Indian government will offer dual citizenship while getting another country's citizenship, right? Also, there are other factors, soft power enhancement. As you can understand, globally, countries are moving more towards soft power and increasing their reliance on soft power because the limitations of hard power everybody has seen, because you can't tilt another country's favor in front of you just by using a military or your economy resources. Culturally also, or your culture plays a long part. How many of you have visited Korea? But many of you might be aware of the culture of Korea just because of the popularity of K-pop, popularity of Korean food, etc. So this is how soft power increases your overall awareness with the country. Similarly, how many of you have been to Japan? But I'm sure many of you must have watched anime, many of you must be following Japanese culture in one way or the other. So this is how soft power enhances your overall appeal. So a robust diaspora with dual citizenship will act as an informal ambassadors which will strengthen India's diplomatic and trade relations with other countries. Your culture will be much more perceived and better accepted in foreign countries, and also there are precedent in other countries that one of the reasons we give in our support is that others are also doing it, so why can't we do it, right? So similar way, if US and UK are doing it, so why can't India do it and offer dual citizenship, right? So this is how we can argue for dual citizenship, but not that. There are also arguments that we should not give dual citizenship, or any person who is an Indian citizen can't be a citizen of another country. And why are that arguments given? First of all, there are a question of divided loyalties. What happen if you are having a conflicted political loyalty? Also, in cases particularly during disputes between these two countries. For example, you are an Indian country and you are also a citizenship of countries X. So while X and I are in some form of dispute and India are in some form of dispute, where will your loyalty be? Will you be tilting your balances in favor of country X, or will you be tilting your balances in favor of India? So that is one of the biggest questions. Also is the matter relating to erosion of sovereignty. Now, whenever you allow dual citizenship to vote and influence policy making, it might give individuals with foreign loyalties a say in India's internal matters, which overall threatens your national sovereignty. What is sovereignty in political context? Sovereign nation means a nation can decide on its own policies without an interference from outside the country. But what if a citizens belonging to US, they might vote in Indian election? So technically, whatever Indian government is perceiving as an Indian citizen demand might not be just demands of Indian citizen, but also from citizens across the globe. Also, there is also severe administrative and legal complexities, because managing dual citizenship would have to make you introduce other forms of complexities in area where to tax these people, legal disputes if there were happen, law enforcement problems. What if a citizen who is also a citizenship of US, if they commit crime in US and comes to India, whether India will extradite that person to US or not? That is also legal complexity. So these kind of conflicts arise because the two laws of two different countries might not be same in every circumstances. Similarly, you have to understand that there are many security risks. Dual citizen could exploit their status for espionage, illegally financing their economic activities, and also other actions which might be harmful to India's interest. Similarly, in cases of unequal treatment, the privileges of dual citizenship could disproportionately favor wealthier and well-placed diaspora communities, leading to socio-economic imbalances. Because eventually, who are the people we talk about? Are we talking about cab drivers of Indian origin living in Canada? No. We are only talking about the socio-economically powerful and elite people living in other countries like Sundar Pichai, like Satya Nadella. Only, right? So that is how this might also lead to unequal treatment, that we'll start giving citizenship only to people who are influential based on our cost benefit. Similarly, it might lead to political manipulation. There's a risk of foreign influence on Indian political processes, even if, especially if dual citizens are allowed to vote and hold public office. So what if a person who might be elected as an MP in India, what if he also belongs to countries like US and UK? So they might also cater to the interests of their other countries, right? So this is how political manipulation, security risks are also threats that might happen in cases of offering dual citizenship. So what do you feel about dual citizenship? More than what you feel, I want to know how you write this answer. Please submit your answers by 8 p.m. Today I will correct your yesterday's and today's question. Right now I am unavailable to correct because I have a classes from 6 to 9 in the evening. So I get free by 9:30. So you can understand my state of mind, even if I am scrolling down my mobile phone, is not as good to evaluate the answer. So please give me time. I will 100% evaluate the answer. I might take some time. Okay. So this is the group that you can submit your answers to. This is all from my side for today. I'll see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. sharp. So please have a very good evening and also a very good night.